Everybody, welcome to Honey Radio. This is episode number 16, and this is Kat. I am the head honey, and I'm joined tonight by Linnie the Revenge Honey, Katie the Sci-Fi Honey, and Kaylee the Gamer Honey. And tonight we're joined by our very special guest, Mr. Nicholas Tucci, who had the distinction of having his head blended in a film I think all of the honeys really enjoyed, You're Next. Home invasion gone horribly awry. So, Nicholas, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
We're super stoked that you're here. We are all big fans of You're Next.
I'm glad.
And we've got a bunch of questions for you about that and about some of your other projects that you've been involved in.
Oh, that sounds good to me.
All right, who wants to start off? Actually, I'm going to make Linnie start off.
Okay. Do you want me to cover for Jocelyn?
We'll figure it out.
Okay.
Start wherever you want to start.
Our hardcover honey couldn't be here, and she is a Your Next super fan, so she has a lot of questions for you.
Oh, awesome.
Let's see. Let's start with a fun one. How did you feel about your infamous death scene? Were you pleased to have something that was so original?
Yeah, I remember the first time that I read the script and I got to that, I was like, wow, that's a really awesome way to die. And I had died gotten grievously injured in other, previous movies that I had done. But I kind of knew right away that was going to be something special. And also, a lot of the majority of times I've gotten either killed or maimed, it's been by a beautiful woman, and so this was certainly keeping it in that tradition, and I really liked that about it. But I didn't really know, what the kind of practical effect or how they were actually going to pull that off. But I know definitely that I knew sort of instantaneously that was definitely something that I wanted to be a part of and reap all the notoriety or whatever that would come as a result of being that guy.
Yeah. Spoiler alert: blender to the head is definitely something that you wouldn't automatically think of in a pinch, but it seems like it would be effective.
Yeah, and I think they figured out a way to make it as plausible as possible in the movie. I mean, it's just like, how are you sort of going to get there? And it was described really well, but then when it comes to actually doing it, I think there was a lot of sort of trepidation about that, but I think it really worked. And especially, Adam Wingard is such a good director, and he also edited the movie, and just the way they put it together, I thought was really fantastic. And that was actually one of the earliest things that I got to see of the movie. I had to go in and do some ADR, some voice dubbing, and that was when they just needed like another layer of scream or something like that. And so that was one of the first things that I saw, and I think my initial reaction to it, I was like, God, look at that stupid look on my face. That's not what I thought I was doing at all. But it really works. But yeah, and I actually have a funny story about shooting that. It's funny to me anyway. I don't know whether anybody else will find it funny. But when the day came to shoot it, we had sort of blocked out that fight the day before in the kitchen with Wendy Glenn and Sharni Vincent, obviously, the three of us sort of fighting it out. And we obviously, we didn't get into a test run of that particular part because it's just there's too many sort of aspects to it, and you need the props and you need the effects and stuff like that. So the next day comes around, and we're getting ready to shoot it. It was late at night, and there's two guys that were working on the movie who I knew, who I'd worked with before. One was a guy named Corey Johnson, who was the first assistant director of the movie, and the other guy was a really wonderful stunt coordinator named Clayton Barber. Both guys are really just unbelievably good at their jobs, and I really kind of trusted both of them. I feel like I had sort of a rapport with both of them even before You're Next started shooting. And they were really sort of conscious, obviously, as you have to be, of the sort of intricacies and the level of danger, I guess, in doing things like that. Everybody's top priority is to make sure that everybody's safe at all times and that kind of thing. Anyway, we're getting ready to shoot it, and I think I was outside kind of, gearing myself up or psyching myself up to do it. And I noticed Corey and Clayton in the driveway of the house where we were shooting. So they were maybe about 20 yards away from me, but I could hear what they were saying. And Clayton was saying to Corey, all right, after we do it, everybody on set, everybody around has to stay perfectly still. We'll go up and we'll see if he's okay. If he's not okay, we'll take him straight out to the car. And just as he said that, a car with one of the crew members of the movie pulls up and is sitting sort of right in front of where I was standing and just kept idling. And I thought to myself, God, they're not even going to wait to have to turn the car on. The car is literally going to be running to take me to the hospital if this goes wrong. And so that was the moment, I think, where before it didn't really occur to me what I was in for. I don't think I really got scared until that moment. And 5 minutes later we were going through and doing it. So that was one of those real sort of kind of wake up call moments where everything, but luckily it worked out, or it sort of worked out. I guess the other part to that story was that we did 2 takes of it. And they had a really great prop. There were 2 different props. Both of them were really great. But the first one was the real base of a blender, the hard molded plastic and the wire and everything. And then on top was this sort of breakaway glass, like sugar glass or something like that formed the top that she's going to smash against the side of my head. And even though it was this breakaway glass, it was really kind of thick, molded glass as they are. And so the first time we did it, Sharni was just, totally wasn't her fault, but she was a little too high on, she had the blender sort of raised up a little too high, and basically it still shattered sort of all over my head and my face, but she really brained me with the base of that thing. She just passed it around metal. I mean, it took it right behind the ear, and it was sort of and so I went down, and they were basically like, all right, that looked pretty good. Do you have another one in you? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I actually don't know. I've seen the movie a few times, and I'm actually not sure what take it was, but that definitely, it exceeded all expectations for what it was going to be like.
Well, you achieve a certain level of horror movie infamy if you have a really creative, interesting, gruesome death, and I think that, brains scrambled by blenders fits that achievement really well, so bravo.
Yeah, I mean, if that's, as these things go, if that's my legacy, I think that's a good one to have. I mean, I would like to get, recognized on the street for the guy that got his head blended. That would be pretty awesome. Yeah. And also, I wouldn't turn down, an offer to do some promotion for KitchenAid or like that. If they come calling, I'm definitely taking the call.
There you go, KitchenAid. Are you listening to this podcast?
Yeah, I need work. Yeah.
That's great. It actually leads into her next question. How well did you guys all know each other before you started shooting? I know a lot of Adam Wingard's cast has done movies before together. So were you given kind of an opportunity to bond and form relationships with everyone else? Because it translated like you had.
Once I got there, I was. Beforehand, I didn't really know anyone. Now, I did know the producers of the movie because I had worked on their previous horror effort, Keith and Jess Calder, who have Snoot Entertainment that produced the movie. So I knew them. They were down there, and I knew Corey, and I knew Clayton. But as far as the cast, I didn't really know anyone, and I had only just met Sharni and Wendy. It was a very fast thing after getting cast in the movie. I think there was 7 or 8 days before I was down there in Missouri shooting it. But I didn't know anybody. But what was really cool was that, everybody was so great. I've never had an experience to the contrary, really, on a movie. I've been really, really lucky. And I could tell that these people had a very close working relationship. They were all really, really, tuned into each other. They really knew, how everybody worked, and particularly between Adam and the cast members. Most of the people, or quite a few of the people, had just been on his previous film, A Horrible Way to Die. So they had you could tell that they had sort of a friendship and a real working relationship with each other. And also that movie was filmed in Columbia, Missouri, too. So I think they were back sort of in a familiar environment. I really wasn't. And, it was just a sort of testament to how really nice and friendly everybody was, that I really kind of felt, as comfortable as possible working with them and doing scenes with the rest of the cast, and especially in such a sort of short time frame. I mean, the production moved very quickly, and I think that, I definitely think it was a benefit. I mean, the other thing that was a benefit to me, too, just in terms of the character, and I think maybe for Wendy, too, and also for Sharni, was that, there is a certain amount of this sort of outsider element to those characters. They're not really, even Felix, who's a member of the family, is sort of the black sheep, or like the one that didn't fit in. And so I think there was a certain amount of that kind of bled into what was going on. I tried to sort of think about that a little bit, just in the sort of relationships. It's not that I was actively trying not to be friends with anybody or something like that, but I thought that the fact that the rest of these people were sort of so close, it really sort of, there was that sort of verisimilitude of being kind of apart from that I think sort of helped.
I totally agree. Oh, wow. That echo. I totally agree that it really shows the, the separation between your character and the rest of the family is really evident. And, if you don't know them, I think that translated really well.
Yeah. I think the other thing, too, was that, speaking of the, the way that these kind of, the experience of making the movie kind of finds a way to sort of inform what's going on in the script, or the way you're trying to tell the story, was that the entire shoot for You're Next, at least the part that I was a part of, which was about 30 days, give or take, it was all night shoots. So it was all 7 p.m. to like 7 a.m. or so. And it just kind of got to be this sort of, it sort of ran together. I mean, it was this kind of one long night. And I think that when the movie kind of, you collapse that down into the movie, I think a certain amount of that really sort of came through, that they're in this endless kind of night together, and they're all sort of trying to get through it, and people are kind of getting picked off one by one. And usually what would happen is that when somebody died in the movie, the person would be gone the next day. They would be on a plane back home. And so you would sort of miss them. It would be that kind of thing. Like Rob Moran, who plays my father in the movie, I remember doing that scene, and then the next day, he was such a great guy, and just really, I really, really liked him, and everybody did, and there was such a sense of loss the next day when we showed up, and we were like, yeah, Rob's gone, that's it, and it kind of, I would think it was sort of similar in some ways to what the characters were going through, or some of them anyway. Yeah.
Nice. Our Hardcover Honey, Jocelyn, she's actually from Missouri. So one of her questions was, did the rural shooting area in Columbia kind of help create a believable feeling of isolation?
I think so. I think there's sort of two facets to that. One was the actual house that we were shooting in was sort of in the, kind of middle of nowhere, or at least it seemed very sort of isolated. And the house wasn't really functional. I think that there's a part in the movie where they talk about how it's the father's sort of retirement project. The house actually was sort of in that condition when we showed up, and the production designers were the ones that got it to basically, the place that you see in the movie in terms of where it's at, the state of repair or disrepair that it's in. And I think that and combined with just the darkness, like the night, there'd be big sort of, stage lights and that kind of thing shining, and you could see the sort of the illumination from that sort of up in the air and sort of off in the distance. But it was a very kind of closed sort of set atmosphere. There weren't a lot of people kind of coming or going at any time. So I think that definitely played a part of that. And also just where we were in Colombia, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot around. There was the hotel we were staying at, and there was like a country kitchen buffet, and there was like a gas station or something like that. So it definitely was a kind of new, getting used to a new place and a new sort of experience in that respect. So yeah, I think that did. I mean, the other sort of, there were so many things that were sort of strange or kind of funny that happened in the midst of shooting the movie. One of them that I remember, this was really early on, was I think everybody was out to dinner or something like that, and I ended up in the car with Rob Moran and Barbara Crampton. And Barbara was driving the car, and we were all going to meet the rest of the cast and crew at this establishment in Colombia called Peppers. Peppers is interesting because it was the same place where people had hung out on their night off when they were doing A Horrible Way to Die. So the people that worked on that production were familiar with it. And it was sort of a bar / karaoke bar / pool hall / brothel. I mean, I personally never saw anything like that going on, but that was the talk. So I think it was the first time we were going there. And Barbara was driving the car. I was in the back. Rob was sitting shotgun. And I had my phone. And I said, all right, I'll GPS this place and, navigate for you. So I don't know whether it was Google Maps or whatever sort of let me down in that situation. But we got on this road, totally deserted. No, not even any like lights or anything like that. No businesses, no houses, just sort of driving into this darkness along this road, and my GPS is still directing me, just keep going, keep going, keep going, and I'm telling them this. So after about like 25 minutes, it becomes very clear, and I'm thinking to myself all the while, like, they're going to try to like spare me the embarrassment of telling me that I'm totally wrong. I have to say something here. We're going to end up in Chicago or something like that. So finally I said, maybe you want, to Rob, like, oh, maybe you want to check this out on your iPhone or whatever and see if we can get back on track here. And he did, and he immediately was able to figure out that we were totally, we were like miles beyond Peppers. So they turned around, we got there, and, 15 minutes later, and I was thinking to myself, like, wow, like, this is some real sort of method acting stuff here. Like, I'm the useless son. I'm the son that, like, has really disappointed his parents, The first time we got to hang out together off set, I really have fulfilled that aspect of the character. So, yeah.
How important do you think it was to break up the horror and action with the moments of comedy from the movie?
I mean, I think it was, seeing the final version of the film, I think it was really important. I mean, I guess it would. I've been to a couple of different screenings of the movie, and there were definitely screenings where people were flipping out and like really, really, responding to every little sort of thing. And I think that the thing about the humor in the movie is that it's not the thing I think Simon did really well, and the actors I think really succeeded in doing is, letting this kind of situation, what's going on, sort of inform the audience's sort of reaction to the movie. I mean, I think depending on how you watch it, that's something that I think the audience really kind of places, within their sort of viewing experience. I mean, I know for me, Sharni had this sort of joke, and it actually isn't a joke at all. It's really true. But, you know, she would say, like, you know, we were about a week in to shooting, and we looked at each other and we said, is this a comedy we're doing? Because so many of the things sort of were so absurd. It was just sort of starting to dawn on us that this stuff was actually funny. You know, at the same time, just because of the way that things are shot, and, you know, it takes a long time and everything's sort of broken up, you don't get that same kind of flow in, you know, the way things are kind of timed out and so forth over the larger kind of like scope of the movie. But I think it was great. I mean, the times when people, you know, when I was in an audience where people really thought that a lot of stuff in the movie was funny, even stuff. I mean, Joe Swanberg, for example, is like unquestionably funny in the movie. The stuff that he came up with and the stuff that he had to do, you know, no matter which way you slice it, I mean, that stuff's funny, I feel like. But some of the other stuff is just sort of, I think, just the insanity of the situation and the way that people react to it. And I think for the most part, everybody was kind of try to, you know, react sort of as truthfully, and it sounds a little pretentious, but to try to like respond to this stuff like you would normally kind of respond to it. And then the way that it plays, you know, it plays out so funny in some moments, I think really is a testament to Adam and Simon's kind of work putting it together and finding those kind of beats and those moments where, you know, you get a kind of release from the tension. You know, there aren't really as many jokes, I don't think, as there are opportunities to, you know, to kind of, you know, get some kind of relief where you don't have to sort of, you know, things aren't so grim for a moment, and it's kind of amplified because of that.
Yeah, can I just say, because you mentioned going to a few different screenings of the film, seeing this for the first time was one of my favorite screening experiences, because I live in Sacramento, California, and we still have a drive-in here, which is amazing. Wow. We went and saw it at the drive-in. And it was a warm night, so we had the windows down, and you can just hear across the whole lot of cars an occasional hysterical laugh or a scream, or, you know, someone walks by your car when there's a jump scare, and then everyone screams, and it was just an amazing experience seeing it at the drive-in.
That's really great. That's good.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, I think it's one of those. I think that really is in line with the objective of the movie. What they were going for. You know, the story was that Adam and Simon did a movie that was at Toronto Film Festival the previous year, and I think they were there for Insidious. I think that was the movie, and it just had this huge crowd reaction. And they were thinking about that, and they were thinking about Scream, and they said to themselves, we really want to make, you know, that kind of a raucous, you know, just insane movie experience for the audience. That's really what they had in mind to begin with. So it's really gratifying to hear that you had that experience and that, you know, other people have with it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. So we have I want to ask a question.
Oh, go for it.
We actually have a question from one of our Twitter followers, Chastity. She would like to know what your favorite scene from the movie is.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
You can say one of yours. It's okay.
Yeah. I wish that were true. I guess it's sort of moments. I mean, in terms of scenes, I really love A.J. Bowen's monologue at the end. I was there for some of that, and I remember him kind of walking around. It was this 4-page monologue, and the first part of it, he's on the phone. The second part of it, he's in the house, and you know, the dude just like blew through it. He did it like twice, and they got it. And I thought that was really awesome, and I thought it plays really, really well in the movie. I really liked that, and a couple other moments. I like when Elsie Holt, who's the Lamb Mask guy, steps on the nail, and his profane reaction to that. I thought that was really, really funny, and that was another thing where, you know, he just did it, basically. They put the camera on, he did the stunt, he went off and did it. I guess another one, in terms of a moment, would be when Z, when I turned down her slightly strange request in the bedroom, and she sits on the bed next to Barbara Crampton's corpse, and she takes a ring off her finger and kind of puts it on and is sitting there looking very sort of sultry and kind of Cleopatra-esque. I really love that moment. That, again, was just something that Wendy did. They had that idea in the room, and she did it. It came out really, really great. So, yeah, I love those moments. And anytime the song played, I really, really like that song. I still, listen to it all the time, and it gets me all fired up.
That was going to be one of my questions, is if you guys are all really sick of that song.
I haven't gotten sick of it yet. No, definitely. I'll play it in the car, listen to it. I guess especially the lead up to the movie, when, there's a sort of sense of anticipation. I used to, the only release that I got from those kind of feelings were listening to that Dwight Twilley song. So yeah, I don't think I'll ever be sick of it. The question is whether I'll eventually get some lyrics tattooed somewhere. I definitely done that before. So there's still the danger that could happen, I guess.
And you wouldn't be alone in this company either.
Yeah. There's a great story about that song too, which is that it's been told before. I'll try to do my best to recount it, but it was actually something that Simon Barrett, the screenwriter and producer, who would tell, and it was that when they decided that was going to be the song they were going to use, and so they had to get the rights, and they had to get the rights directly from Dwight Twilley, and so they called Dwight Twilley one night, and his wife answered the phone, and Simon said later that he thought that, maybe Mr. and Mrs. Twilley had a few glasses of wine that night. That was sort of what was kind of going on. And they got into this conversation about how they wanted the song. And there were a couple different songs that they were sort of talking about. And when they got to looking for the magic, Dwight Twilley's wife said, "You want the magic, but you can't afford the magic." and Simon said, "But it turns out the magic was really affordable," and so they ended up getting it.
It's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
How can you put a price on magic?
Yeah.
So the second part of Chastity's question is she wants to know your take on the underlying theme of the film itself.
I would say, don't mess with Sharni Vinson.
Well, we knew that one.
That's the one, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it's sort of, I really like it when people sort of, I don't know if read into things is sort of the right word, but I don't know that for me, there is anything really sort of definitive that it's sort of trying to say. I mean, I think it's more this, it's this sort of idea of kind of chaos, and that, lurking beneath the surface of this really sort of idyllic family and situation is, real hatred and sort of contempt, and the levels to which that can kind of bubble up. And also just the idea that, to get back to the Sharni thing, you don't know who you're messing with in any situation. You don't know who the person who's going to turn out to be the hero is, and you don't know who the sort of most dangerous person in the room is at any time. And I think that, I think there's those kinds of things. And also, like I said, I think they really just wanted to entertain people with a sort of, the kind of idea of the movie was just really to make something that was really sort of entertaining, and that you could get kind of swept up in and sort of go along for the ride.
That's awesome. All right. Who wants to take the next set of questions?
Whoa, we got an echo.
We do have an echo.
Well, I mean, is there any more on the movie?
Oh, I'm sure we'll think of some. But Kaylee, if you want to go ahead and ask some gamey questions, you can.
Okay. Well, I know there's one that Kat is interested in. I'm also actually interested in, as well as how a person can go from what the process is from going from filming movies to going into voice acting for games. Like you started off in Syndicate. So how did you go from films to video games?
I got really, really lucky. Voiceover stuff was something that I was really interested in doing, and it was kind of one of those situations where, as I think you kind of run into, in the sort of movie business, is, it's really hard to kind of break into it, and it's hard to kind of get yourself in a situation where you're doing that kind of work. Once you get a chance to do it for the first time, hopefully, you're able to sustain it. And people really have terrific careers, doing voiceover stuff, and it's such a great job too, because just the amount of time that is spent, it's vastly different in terms of the process of doing movies. I got really lucky because I met a guy in LA named Tom Keegan, who is a casting director and a video game sort of director, that sort of thing. His focus was mostly in video games. And the first thing that I actually did for him was Medal of Honor. It was the one that was a few years ago. And I just sort of, I got an opportunity to send him my resume and some sort of film clips, that sort of thing. And I think one of the reasons why they called me in was because up to that point I had done most of my work in the theater, and they would always look for theater people to come in and do that kind of stuff. So I went in and I auditioned for that Medal of Honor part, and I got it. And then over the next couple of years, this guy is just, a prince, a really, really great guy. He kept calling me back in to audition for different games after that, and that was kind of how I got to be involved. And the process of doing it, is very, very different. Obviously, in most situations, you're in a sound booth, standing in front of a microphone, doing it. And the other thing, just in terms of kind of character and story, or where those are concerned, you only get sort of small bits and pieces. There isn't a script where you read through it and it's like, a lot of my video game knowledge is like Legend of Zelda. I'm basically like, so it's not, it's not the kind of thing where like Link goes to this castle and he kills the street dragon and that sort of thing. It's not like that at all. It's just basically segments of these situations where there's a ton of other things going on. And most of it is sort of either very short kind of phrases or just sort of interjections, stuff like that. So most of it is you just sort of standing there and being like fire or down, that sort of thing. And they'll, as they're directing it, they'll kind of try to modify your pitch and where you are, the timbre of your voice or where you're sort of at to get the sound effect that they're looking for. So it's been the times that I've gotten to do that. It's one of these things, these games. One thing I think that plays into it is that they have massive confidentiality agreements.
Yeah.
They don't want like a single thing to come out. And especially when you're like, well, I'm just saying shoot, like that kind of thing. What the hell am I going to like reveal that people aren't going to happen? But they really do, because these games take a really long time to get made. So you'll do like your voiceover stuff and the movie won't come out for the video game won't be done for 2 years after that. So it's a really interesting kind of, experience to get to do it. And in the times when I've done it, I was alone, obviously, for the first couple of games that I worked on. And then I got to do Wolfenstein, which I think is out or is very close to being out.
Yeah, it's not quite out yet.
I guess I'm glad you said that, because maybe I have to be careful. Or
yeah. Well, that was another thing is for Wolfenstein: The New Order, you did motion capture, or that's what Linnie told me.
That's right.
Was that a lot more different than Syndicate?
Yeah, definitely.
What was the process in that?
That was something that was totally new to me. Yeah, that was a situation where you're not in a booth at all, and you're basically you're doing this stuff kind of live, and that's only like a small part of it. But yeah, I remember. Yeah, I really remember those days. It's the kind of, I'm sure a lot of people have seen what this sort of looks like, but you're wearing like a bodysuit, basically, like a wetsuit kind of thing with a hood. And you wear a helmet, and the helmet has like a kind of wire, sort of almost a coat hanger wire, that leads out about a foot away from your face. And then there's a camera that's facing back at your face and recording your facial expressions as you're doing, the work. And there's little dots all over your face. And then all over the bodysuit, it's all covered in Velcro. And they have these little silver balls, a little smaller than a golf ball, let's say, that they stick all over your body, all points like joints and different kind of key parts of your body. And you're in a huge room. It was like a sort of like an aircraft hangar or something like that, just this massive room that had cameras 360 degrees all around. So they're basically shooting you from every angle at all times. And, it was really interesting. I mean, that was definitely a new thing. You get used to sort of, sometimes in the theater, not so much in movies, but certainly when you're blocking things out or when you're doing an audition, you get used to kind of working with your imagination and without, real props and without that kind of thing. But this was really sort of to another level where they were like, all right, there's a river, and you guys are crossing this river single file, and here's where you got to jump and that kind of thing. And so it was really cool. And one thing that I thought was interesting about that was that there was literally a dedicated crew member on the floor all times while you're shooting, whose job is to run out and reaffix those silver balls to your body.
So you had a professional ball handler with you at all times.
Exactly right.
Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you.
I'll never work again without one. It literally happened every day where somebody would lose a ball and they have to come back and reattach it. So, that was really, really cool. And there were awesome people on that, too. There were some really great actors. You could tell that were like really, really solid, experienced actors, not just voice actors, but really, really cool people that we're all sort of in it together with. And, you'll be happy to know that I die a real horrible death in the game.
Oh, well, I'll have to definitely keep an eye out for that. And I think Bethesda's ears are burning right now because I just got an email from them with the Wolfenstein release date. It releases next month on the 20th. It's currently available for pre-order. So I guess I like summoned them to my inbox just now. I know you're probably under a strict NDA, but is there anything you can talk about it? Like any of your favorite experiences in the booth?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say what's going to kind of be in there that I was there for. This was a long time ago, and you don't know what makes the cut. I mean, I do know they probably won't. They probably won't come after me for saying that. At one point, I get an eye shot out, and so that kind of was my character thing to have to deal with, and also became my like personal sort of cross to bear throughout the shooting. And I think there was a really nice guy that I worked with on that video game who gave little gifts, like parting gifts to everybody at the end of the shoot. It was a really sweet thing for him to do. But I think he actually signed my card, Nick, really sorry about the eye. But I think
you gotta wear some head protection.
Yes.
Exactly, yeah. But I'm definitely gonna be interested to see how that comes out. The way that from what I know about it, which is very limited, it's a really, really cool idea and a cool story. And all of the people, all the talent, I thought everybody was really, really great. There's some really great voice stuff going on, so I'm sure the game will live up to that. Yeah,
it's looking to be really good. It's one of my top ones to look out for this year. So
that's great.
So I get to watch you die pretty soon next month.
I hope so, yeah.
2 things that we've watched where you die.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Well, there's a few more out there. If it's something, and I'm really hoping that that in the future I'll rack up a few more of those. Definitely. Although the blender, I don't think will ever be surpassed.
No, I think that's going to be a classic for a while.
Really good, yeah. To beat that.
Well, that actually leads into another question that we had. What are your long-term goals in the industry? Do you want to keep acting? Do you want to do more voice stuff? Maybe try directing? And do you think you're going to stay in the horror genre?
I'd love to. I mean, that really is the sort of answer to the question. I've been a big horror fan as long as I can remember. I mean, I think most of it, early was sort of fiction. I think the earliest kind of exposure that I had to, that kind of stuff was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Oh my god.
That was definitely, I remember reading those and like being in the public library where I grew up and like 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that and just being absolutely like terrified.
Yeah.
And then some of it was just kind of circumstantial or sort of environmental. My dad had a huge collection of Stephen King. And so I got into those books really, really early too, to the dismay of a few of my teachers actually. When I was in 6th grade, I wanted to do a book report about a short story called Sometimes They Come Back. And there's that story where a guy has to cut off 2 of his fingers to make a sacrifice. The teacher was like, hi, Stephen King, I have to read this before I report in front of class. So she read it and she came back the next day and she said, that's self-mutilation. I was like, deal, everybody can handle it here, And so I kind of was brought up with that and those kind of influences. So I definitely like sort of down the stretch to kind of be a horror guy, one of these guys. There are a lot of people in the industry that I think you could assign that sort of label to. And I'd really love to be one of them. I mean, it's something that interests me very much. I really love acting and all different kinds of acting. And I just like to do as much of it as possible in as many different sort of realms as I can. I in the last couple of years, I started to do some screenwriting. And of course that, the scripts that I've written, a couple of them have been adaptations of horror novels. And the one original one that I wrote is definitely a horror movie. So, yeah, I'm going to stick to my guns. I mean, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't want to be involved in really any and everything. And I think that, it's kind of cool when you have the opportunity. I think a lot of the kind of career that I sort of like to have down the stretch is really get, in a position where I can work a lot sort of as the bad guy or that kind of thing. And then get a few opportunities to kind of branch out from that and show something a little bit different. But I'd be content to be in horror movies and things like that for as long as I'm able to.
I think that's really awesome. That also leads into kind of the next question I was going to ask you, like, which is more fun to play, villain or hero? But I really like the way you want to go about it and be the bad guy and then shock people and be like a romantic lead or something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a funny thing about being trying to be an actor is that I think that everybody goes into it with a certain preconceived notion of who they are and who they can play. And I remember a very good friend of mine who was a big influence on me early on, was a real sort of Shakespearean actor and that kind of thing, was saying you really have to know the other side of the coin. You really need to know sort of across the desk or across the audition room what people sort of perceive you as. So if you're a Romeo, you need to go after those Romeo parts. But if you're a Benvolio or a Tybalt, going after the Romeo part is to your disadvantage. You know what I mean? You have to kind of know what you are. And so I think when I initially started kind of going after movie jobs, that was something that I really kind of gravitated to really early on. And then, of course, I realized you have absolutely no control over the way somebody's going to see you and what they're going to cast you in.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was really a fortunate sort of situation because it was something that I really wanted to do. I realized that there was no way that, that I could sort of guarantee that's what would happen, but then it kind of worked out anyway. So it was, it was sort of lucky. And I do like playing bad guys. I mean, you get to play with weapons, you get to do a lot more cool stuff, makeup and getting set on fire, and that's all stuff that like really, really appeals to me for some reason. So,
Well, I'm not surprised.
Love that.
I'm not surprised. I think I've always been a villain fan since I was really young, just because they seem to have the most personality.
Yeah,
they have the deeper characters, not just look how cute he is. There's more to it. There's that dark, wormy, rotten soul underneath, and it makes it more delicious.
And you can tell that people really have fun doing that kind of stuff too. I mean, I think that really comes through, is that you're always sort of, as you're watching something, it's really, those are the people that are just more sort of delicious, and the kind of stuff that they get to do is, is a lot juicier, I feel like.
Absolutely. I would much rather watch Jeremy Irons as a villain than Jeremy Irons as a good guy.
There you go.
Because I'm always waiting for him to be a bad guy.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my god. So what kind of movies did you grow up watching? Did you have a certain kind of thing? I mean, obviously you started off reading Stephen King, and I think most of the Honeys started off with our love of horror that way.
No doubt.
Like the Stephen King gateway drug.
I feel so out of the loop in that area.
Oh no, we'll educate you, baby. It's okay.
No, I started through gaming. So.
Oh, good. Well, that's all right. You're fine then.
Yeah, I mean, as far as movies, I think the earliest ones that I can remember are the old classic kind of Lon Chaney Jr. The Wolfman was like my big favorite when I was a real little kid.
Nice.
And then, although it's not really, I guess in some respects, I mean, to me it certainly is, but Jaws was like the big movie for me kind of growing up. One story from Jaws was that when I was maybe like 9 years old, and my aunt and uncle were babysitting me and my sister, and my parents were out, and they had a copy of Jaws on VHS that we were going to watch, and that was going to be the activity for the night. And I remember when the Universal logo comes up at the beginning of the movie, I got very confused. And I became convinced in that moment that they had rented a space movie, because you see the globe sort of come out in this sort of like, this sky. And I started crying because I wasn't going to get to watch Jaws. They had gotten a space movie. I was like totally closed off to the idea of watching anything other than Jaws. And then quickly I realized that I was mistaken. That everything was going to be okay. But
not okay.
Those are kind of the early ones, and I feel like sometimes like all I do is watch movies and certain TV shows that I really, really like, kind of obsessively. I kind of, I definitely like to see new stuff as it comes out, stuff that I've heard good things about, and I have a lot of friends that are in the industry and a lot of people that I admire, and so I always like to kind of keep up with their work. But I tend to be a little bit redundant or a little bit kind of obsessive about the stuff that I watch, where I can just watch things over and over and over again and kind of do it sort of in cycles. One thing that was interesting on Your Next was that Wendy and I, for some reason, just how these things go sometimes, I would say about 85% of the stuff that that's in the final version of the movie with me and Wendy was shot between like 5:30 and 7:30 in the morning, because they had lots of stuff to do, and our stuff would get pushed or they wouldn't be ready on certain days, that sort of thing. So we had a ton of time like on set to just basically like sit around and like eat Skittles and things like that, and before we had to shoot. And I remember we watched like Blue Valentine, which I really loved, and we watched a lot of The Wire too, sort of over and over, like kind of up in this this sort of holding area room while we were getting ready to do it. And at one point, I think I left the room to get a Slim Jim or something like that, to get a soda. And I came back, and Wendy was sitting there, and she was still watching The Wire, and she was like, "Oma died," and that was really a sort of funny moment. And I think that sort of, I'm not sure exactly why that is, that those kind of, that sort of appeals to me, is sort of watch things over and over like that. I guess I really love them. Is probably the reason why.
I do the same thing. I do exactly the same thing, and I binge watch TV shows too, so I feel you on that one.
Yeah, totally.
Do you have a favorite Stephen King film adaptation?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I don't think it's been... What the hell would it be? I mean, I don't want to say The Shining. That's so obvious. I guess... I'm really trying to think now. I mean, I really love my favorite Stephen King novel, and my favorite all-time novel is Pet Sematary. And I really like that. I really like that movie version. I think that it feels a little sort of dated, and they're getting ready to do a new one. Is my understanding, or something that I've heard, and I absolutely can't wait for that, just to see what they do with it and how it's different and that kind of thing. And It too. They're doing It over again. I really love that, the miniseries that they did of It with Tim Curry as Pennywise. So I guess those two would be up there, and definitely The Shining too. But
what's
yeah,
your cat's name?
My cat's name is Church. Yeah. Absolutely. We keep him inside though. He doesn't get to go on the road. We're being real careful. The other thing I think about Stephen King, that is just such a big part of my life, is that my family has a lake house in Maine, and so I spent a lot of summers in Maine, and I just really kind of was able to get a real sort of strong hold on what the kind of environment, even for, really early on, everything or so much of it is set in Maine, that I really felt like I knew that place and knew what it was like, and could really identify with, with those stories and those books. But, I'm glad that, that they're continuing to make his movies and kind of do them over. I don't really see anything wrong with, taking another effort or another stab at a novel, and particularly like with Pet Sematary and It, like ones that I just love so much. I just, with bated breath, can't wait for those things to get done. And, my biggest kind of pie in the sky wish would be to one day get to be a part of something like that, even if it's just, the pizza guy or something like that, or whatever. I could maybe do the catering and be there for some of it. But yeah, I definitely, I like them all. There's certain ones that I like more than others, but I want to see more and more.
I'm a big Pet Sematary fan. There's a documentary coming out really soon as well that I'm really excited about.
Oh, about the making of the movie?
Yeah.
Oh, that should be awesome.
Zelda is still so terrifying.
Oh, fuck, I know. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
From when I was a kid, I mean, she haunted my dreams, so...
Yeah. That was a guy, too, I think, that played that.
It was indeed. Yeah, it was indeed.
In the movie. Yeah. Yeah, that's just such a great book, and the whole sort of, I don't know, that book just continues. I mean, you talk about sort of movies or TV shows like that, but that book just has such a profound effect on me every time I read it. There's always something new, or like some kind of different understanding that I kind of get from that. And it's such a short, so, comparatively, like it's not a big tome like It or like Under the Dome, which I really loved, which are just massive books. Mm-hmm. It's comparatively pretty short, but it's just sort of devastating. And the thing that I always think about, the reason why it's so effective, is because, it's really about grief. The supernatural elements to it, I think, are kind of flourishes on this idea of how you can literally go insane with grief and Louis Creed, and just, you know, the way that he kind of devolves. And by the end of the book, my absolute favorite part of the book is, and it's different. I mean, definitely when I was a kid, when Gage comes in and takes the scalpel out and that kind of thing, that was like the big moment. But now it's really after all the stuff has gone down and he's walking up to the pet cemetery, or to the Micmac burial ground, with Rachel's body in his arms, and his friend from the infirmary stops him, and they have this weird little conversation. Lewis's hair has gone like stark white and stuff like that. Just like blows me away every time. I can't get enough of reading that and just sort of thinking, you know, visualizing that kind of, you know, that scene. I mean, I think that's what's really cool too, and cool about seeing those movies based on books you really love, is that everybody, I think, really creates that kind of movie in their mind, and they see that way before, you know, just upon reading the book, and way before someone's had a chance to interpret it. So, yeah, that's definitely a big favorite of mine.
Oh my God. Okay, so now that we're all completely in love with you, does anyone have any other questions for Nicholas? No?
Maybe.
Well, I was just curious if you could tell us a little bit about what you wrote in the horror genre, your original horror screenplays, or anything going on with that?
Boy, it's funny. I would love to talk about that. Thank you for asking. The original one that I wrote is a big childhood fascination of mine, is the Loch Ness Monster. I wrote a script. It's called Lake Demon. It's not set at Loch Ness. It's set in Lake Okanagan in Canada, where they have
That's
the
right
Canadian,
up the road from me. Wow.
Yeah, they have the Canadian Loch Ness Monster, Ogopogo. So it's sort of the Ogopogo biopic. It's sort of that kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, lake monsters are such a prevalent part of that kind of myth, cryptozoological culture, and there just don't seem to be that many movies like that. Larry Fessenden did a really great movie called Beneath. That's like a killer fish movie that I really loved, but that's the only one I can think of. So anyway, Lake Demon is actually the sort of idea of it is actually based on a real life experience of mine, which is that my Uncle John has a business called Lake Savers, where he goes around to lakes, mostly in the Midwest, and cleans them using dissolved oxygen. So basically, instead of using herbicides and pesticides and that kind of thing, poisons to kill weeds and get rid of muck and crap in lakes, he uses a natural process that cleans lakes, and you grow fish and that sort of thing. And so I between movie work and theater work, I've actually worked with him and his crew of guys a couple of times. And so probably the first 3/4 of the movie is all based on experiences that I had really actually doing that, working in kind of a rural area around a lake. And I literally, this is something that I feel like I really hope someday that it starts to move forward and we can get it made. But that might be perilous, because there's a lot of good old boys up in the upper part of Michigan where the real experience took place, where I literally took their full names and I put them right in the script. They're literally people that I met up there, who just sort of word for word conversationally I totally stole and just made into this sort of screenplay. Which is just basically, it's a little bit like sort of Jaws, in that you definitely don't see anything monstrous for a long time. I think it came out pretty good. I really had a great time writing it, and everything that I've written. It tends to, the funny thing, I wish I was more sort of disciplined in that, in that field, because I find it very hard to kind of just, Stephen King says something about this, which is that, you just write every day, you write 30 pages or whatever every single day. And I found that I haven't really been able to sort of do that. But when I am kind of ready to write something, it all comes out in a burst that's in a very, very concentrated period of time. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool, and it's one of those things where it's difficult to kind of get people to sort of read your stuff at the beginning, or even if you have kind of a prior relationship. I mean, it's arguable who has it sort of worse in the business between actors and writers in terms of kind of getting stuff out there. But yeah, I hope that one day something can kind of come of it, and I think it would be I think people would sort of like it. I mean, if there's anybody else out there that likes these sort of, lake monster, the kind of like dinosaur craned neck thing that we're sort of used to, that's something that I really love, and I've always wanted to see that taken really like seriously in a film and not just treated, in a silly way or a kind of flippant way.
You mean like in the kids' movies? Like it always happens?
Yeah, exactly. Like the water horse.
Yes! Oh my god, what the hell?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, I hope it gets made, because we would all definitely go see it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'll definitely have to... I'll send the link to this podcast to all the people that haven't read it yet and use it as direct market research and be like, I know that this can sell.
Definitely.
Heard it from the source, yeah.
Oh goodness! All right, Nick. Well, we're gonna wrap this up. Is there anything that you would like to say before we close out?
Thank you so much for letting me come on. I really, really enjoyed doing this. It was my first podcast, so thank you all for being so great. And I'll be a devoted follower of your site. Yeah, I think it's. It's so unique and such a unique opportunity to have. So I really appreciate it.
Well, you are just a dirty little heartbreaker. Thank you so much. We've absolutely loved having you on, and I know that people are going to get a kick out of this one for sure.
I hope so.
So thank you so much, and we're definitely going to be watching out for whatever projects you have coming up next. I hope you'll keep us posted on what you're doing next.
I definitely will.
Now, there's something in post-production right now, The Worst Year of My Life. Can you say anything about that just before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a movie. It's not a horror movie. It's a romantic comedy, although I do play a jerk in it.
Perfect.
It was written, directed by a friend of mine named Jonathan Smith, and it's a sort of micro-budget indie movie. But I think it came out really good. It's really sort of funny, and I think there's good performances in it. So I'm not quite sure where they're at in getting that out there, but I know that people are really going to like it when it comes out. And the other one, just the other kind of plug, I guess, would be I did a very, very small part in a movie called Faults by Riley Stearns that just premiered at South by Southwest with Mary Elizabeth Winstead and Leland Orser. And a lot of other great people, including A.J. Bowen. And so I have a little kind of blink and you'll miss it sort of part in that. But that was really, really fun to do. And that's another Snoot Entertainment production. So I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't seen finished versions of either of them. But hopefully everybody will get to see them real soon.
Awesome. We will definitely be watching for that. We'll be watching for The Worst Year of My Life. Don't you go anywhere. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. I really, really liked it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So once again, thank you so much to Nicholas Tucci for joining us tonight. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us. So you can find the Horror Honeys podcast on Podomatic, on Stitcher, on Radio Fubar on Sunday nights at 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST. And you can talk to us on Twitter at horrorhoneys, HORRORHONEYS. And you can find all of our blogs and reviews and interviews on our website at www.thehorrorhoneys.com. And I'm going to flip it over to Linnie, the Revenge Honey. You can find Linnie at...
I'm on Twitter at Linnie Loohoo, LINNIELOOWHO.
And you can find Katie, the Sci-Fi Honey.
I'm on Twitter at Moonrise Sister. It's MOONRISESISTER.
And you can find the Gamer Honey, Kaylee.
On Twitter as Kaylee Azuri, KALEYAZURI.
Awesome. Thank you guys once again so much for listening, and we're all going to say goodbye now. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Goodbye!
Goodbye!
Bye!
Bye!
I love to take my baby to a movie show, so I can try to smooch her while the lights are low. But she won't cuddle to a story of romance. There's only one way I've got a chance. It takes the Batman, Wolfman, Frankenstein or Dracula to put her in the mood for love. It takes the cat girl